Virgo, stop everything you are doing and take a deep, steady breath. Yes, right now. Pause the noise. Silence the world. Come back into your body. Because there is a message, urgent, luminous, and meant only for you, moving toward you like a wave. For 3 nights, a dense blue vibration has been wrapping itself around your dreams. It is not random. It is not your imagination. It is a spiritual frequency that appears only when the veil between realms begins to thin. And Virgo, that veil is trembling for you tonight. You've been feeling unusually sensitive, haven't you? The kind of sensitivity that rises out of nowhere. The sudden sting behind your eyes, the heaviness in your chest, the quiet pull to cry for reasons you cannot explain. These are not emotional accidents. They are signals. They are invitations. They are the first whispers of someone who once loved you deeply. Someone reaching for you from the other side. Your father has been trying to speak. And the moment you took that breath, you opened the door he has been knocking on. But before we step further into this passage of spirit and memory, allow me to welcome you to mindfulness meditation. If this message resonates with you, if it awakens something in you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us continue bringing forward the teachings, the stories, and the healing energy that so many souls seek. Now, Virgo, listen closely. There is a reason this call came tonight. The energy arriving for you is not gentle. It is purposeful, insistent, almost shaking in its urgency. The blue light surrounding you is not just a symbol of healing. It is a bridge. A signal flare. A spiritual thread sent across dimensions so you do not miss what is coming. And here's the part that may surprise you. This connection did not begin this week. It began years ago, in a moment you have forgotten, yet the universe never did. Your father has been waiting for the exact night when your heart would be soft enough, your intuition open enough, your defenses tender enough, for him to step forward without frightening you. You are not imagining the shift in the atmosphere around you. You are not imagining the chills in your spine or the dreams that feel too vivid, too symbolic, too heavy with meaning. Something is approaching you, Virgo. Something sacred, something unfinished, something that will not return again soon. So breathe. Stay with me. Do not break this moment. Because once we cross this threshold, nothing in your inner world will feel the same again. Virgo, when the father wind returns, a portal of boundaries, healing, and becoming. You don't stumble into a moment like this, Virgo. You arrive here because something inside you has been calling for weeks, maybe months, maybe a lifetime. A quiet ache, a whisper you kept pushing aside, a fatigue that sleep could not cure. And tonight, as you sit with these words, the air around you feels just a little different, like someone gently pulling back the veil between worlds, inviting you to listen, to soften, to let the truth come closer than you have allowed in years. This is not a story to entertain you. This is a story meant to reach into the places you avoid, the parts of you that have carried too much, too long. For a moment, imagine the night around you opening like a slow breath. There is a faint breeze brushing your shoulder, the kind that carries the scent of salt water even if you live nowhere near the ocean. A reminder of something ancestral, familiar. This is the energy of the father archetype stepping forward. Not the man who raised you, not necessarily the person you knew, but the protective force that has followed your spirit across lifetimes. And he does not appear in grand gestures. He arrives in subtle ways. A cool draft when all the windows are closed, a flicker in the corner of your vision, the strange clarity that washes over you when the world is quiet. He arrives through symbols because symbols are how the soul remembers. He comes now for a reason. Not to give you comfort you've already learned to create for yourself, and not to tell you what you already know. He comes to interrupt the patterns that have been bleeding you dry. Because somewhere along the road of your life, Virgo, you became the keeper of everyone else's storms. You held their grief, their confusion, their chaos, as if healing them was a debt you owed. You built boundaries out of whispers and hoped people would respect them. But kind hearts often attract those who take without giving, who drain without seeing. And your father energy has seen enough. This is his intervention. There is a spiritual law older than any scripture. Even the most generous soul must protect its flame. A candle cannot light a room if it allows every wind to consume it. And for years, you've been living as though endurance is the same as love. It is not. Endurance is silent. True love, healthy love, knows when to stop pouring, knows when to say no more. And perhaps this is the lesson your real father could never teach you, or maybe he taught it too late, or maybe he taught it through absence instead of presence. But tonight, the message arrives clean and unmistakable. He is telling you, child, your soft heart is not meant to be a battlefield. Every time you said yes when your spirit begged you to say no, a piece of you faded. Every time you rescued someone who had no intention of rescuing themselves, your body carried the fallout. And every time you swallowed your exhaustion and called it responsibility, your soul whispered a little louder, hoping you would finally hear it. That whisper is what opened the portal. That whisper is why you're here. And maybe you've noticed the synchronicities, the songs that play at the exact moment you think of walking away, the dreams that blur the past with the present, the sudden waves of emotion that appear without reason. These are not coincidences. These are signals. Flickers of guidance. Invitations to step back into yourself, into the version of you that existed before the world trained you to ignore your own needs. What I know, after years of studying the psychology of earth signs, is this. Virgo learns boundaries not through books or advice, but through breaking. Not in dramatic ways, but in small, invisible fractures of the heart. Each fracture is a message. You deserve to be protected too. And tonight, the Father Wind comes to seal those fractures, not by erasing what happened, but by giving you the strength to choose differently moving forward. This portal, the one you activate through the simple, symbolic act of engaging, listening, allowing, is not about magic tricks or paranormal intervention. It is about permission. Permission to stop carrying what is not yours. Permission to choose yourself without guilt. Permission to walk away from people who only call your name when they need something. Permission to rest without apologizing. Permission to be held, even if only by the unseen. There is a moment in spiritual history, in nearly every culture, when the guide or guardian steps forward only when the student is ready to release an old identity. And that is where you stand now. You are not being asked to abandon your compassion. You are being asked to refine it. To direct it toward those who reciprocate, who honor you, who see you. And most of all, to direct it toward yourself. Tonight, the portal opens not to change your world, but to change the way you walk through it. And as you sit here, the quiet wraps around you like a promise. You will not lose yourself again. You will not shrink to fit someone else's comfort. You will not bleed so others can heal. Your Father energy stands behind you, steady and unwavering, whispering the words you've needed all along. You are allowed to protect your peace. And as the breeze settles, as the veil closes, something inside you shifts, subtle but permanent. A new boundary forms. A new chapter hums beneath your skin. And for the first time in a long while, Virgo, you feel yourself returning home. Virgo, the day your father's shadow softened, a journey into memory, forgiveness, and freedom. There is a moment in every life when the past stops knocking and simply walks in, quietly, without permission, without ceremony. It does not come to punish you. It comes because you are finally strong enough to face the rooms you locked long ago. Tonight, Virgo, as you sit with these words, you may feel something shift beneath your ribs, like an old door opening in a part of your heart you stopped visiting. That feeling is not fear. It is remembrance. It is the beginning of your healing. Close your eyes for a breath and imagine this. The night settles around you like a soft blanket, and out of the stillness steps the familiar, unmistakable energy of your father. Not the man he was, but the spirit he has become. His presence is gentler now, stripped of human flaws, of impatience, of silence. He approaches with a kind of humility you never saw when he was alive. There is no thunder in his voice, no weight of authority. Only a confession carried on the quiet wind. I didn't know how to love you back then. You feel something inside you loosen at those words, though you may not understand why. Maybe because that apology has lived in your bones since childhood. Maybe because you spent years thinking the problem was you, that you weren't easy to love, that you had to earn affection by doing everything right. And tonight, as this spirit reaches toward you, the truth finally finds you. It was never your fault. You were a child trying to interpret the emotional language of adults who were still wounded children themselves. Your father shows you a glimmer of the past, not the big moments, but the small ones you forgot. The way you sat on the edge of your bed waiting for him to notice you. The way your heart cracked a little each time he turned away, distracted by life, by responsibility, by his own unspoken pain. The way you learned to be quiet, to be capable, to be the easy one. Because somewhere along the way you believed love was conditional, fragile, something you had to qualify for rather than something you deserved simply for existing. This is the root of the ache you carry as an adult. The fear of being too much, or not enough, the instinct to overgive, the pressure to be perfect so no one will ever leave you. And now he stands before you, not as the father you knew, but as the father he wishes he had been. He is not here to rewrite history. He is here to free you from it. He tells you that he sees the armor you wear, the way you take on more than your share, the way you keep peace for everyone else while your own heart waits in the hallway. He sees the exhaustion behind your strength, the restraint behind your kindness. And for the first time, he tells you he's sorry. Sorry for teaching you love through absence. Sorry for letting his silence become your compass. Sorry for handing you responsibilities no child should hold. It is not a dramatic apology. It is simple, raw, sincere, like a hand brushing dust off an old wound. Something sacred happens when you hear him. Something ancient. Because this is not just a father apologizing. This is a generational fracture healing. This is an old story closing. This is your inner child unclenching her fists for the first time in decades. He asks you, softly, to release the belief that you must be flawless to be lovable. He asks you to forgive, not to excuse, but to liberate. Forgiveness is not a surrender. It is a reclamation. It is the moment you stop letting your past write the script for your future. And as you breathe, you feel the weight you've carried for years begin to dissolve. You are not responsible for your father's limitations. You are not responsible for anyone's inability to see your worth. You are always enough. You begin to understand something profound. Love that must be earned is not love. Love that demands perfection is not love. And the fear of abandonment that has shaped so much of your life was born from a child's misunderstanding, not a universal truth. You are not that child anymore. Your father's energy wraps around you like warm light, not to protect you from the world, but to remind you that you no longer need to protect yourself from your own memories. The past cannot hurt you when you face it with open eyes. And as this moment stretches gently around you, you feel something you have not felt in years. Permission. Permission to soften. Permission to rest. Permission to let yourself be human, imperfect, loved. Tonight becomes the quiet rebirth of your spirit. The wound that once defined you begins to rewrite itself. And for the first time you are free, not because the past has changed, but because you have. Virgo, the night the ancestors spoke, a revelation of light, lineage, and liberation. There comes a point in every soul's journey when the veil between the seen and the unseen thins so delicately that even your breath feels like it could part worlds. Tonight is that point for you, Virgo. You may not have asked for it, you may not feel ready for it, but revelation does not wait for convenience. It arrives at the hour your spirit is finally strong enough to receive what your mind has postponed. And as you sit in this quiet moment, a stillness gathers around you, ancient and electric, like the hush before an oracle speaks. Your father's presence shifts. What was gentle becomes solemn. What was soft becomes unmistakably sacred. It is as if he takes a step closer, not toward your body, but toward your lineage, toward the threads that weave your name into the tapestry of those who came before you. His voice lowers, but its resonance deepens, the way a cathedral's walls hold sound long after the hymn has ended. He does not come as memory now. He comes as messenger. He tells you there are truths buried beneath generations of silence. Stories you were never meant to carry, yet somehow you've been carrying their weight all your life without knowing their names. Secrets folded into the fabric of your family, sealed not out of malice but out of fear. Fear of shame, fear of stirring wounds that had never healed, fear of breaking the fragile illusion of everything is fine. And as he reveals this, something ancient within you awakens, the way archaeologists brush dust from an artifact and realize it has been calling them for centuries. He doesn't show you the details yet. Not because he withholds, but because the human heart can only absorb truth at the pace of its own readiness. Instead, he gives you a directive, one only old souls recognize. It's time to break the cycle. And you feel those words in your bones, in the parts of you that have always sensed you were cleaning up emotional ruins that didn't begin with you. But then, his energy sharpens. Not with fear, but with urgency. He warns you of someone, a woman in your orbit whose presence drains you in ways you've tried to rationalize, excuse, or minimize. She may smile with warmth, she may speak softly, but her energy tells the real story. She takes more than she gives. She leans on you because you are steady. She pulls from you because you do not refuse. She cloaks it as friendship, obligation, loyalty, or helplessness, but underneath it lies a hunger that never stops asking. Your father shows you how tired your spirit has become in her presence. The subtle way your shoulders tense, the way your breath grows shallow, the way your intuition whispers, something is off, but your kindness mutes the alarm. And now, with a clarity that feels almost ceremonial, he lifts that veil for you. Not to incite fear, but to return your power. In the ancient world, revelations were never sentences. They were mirrors. And tonight your father holds up a mirror so luminous, every false connection, every hidden agenda, every energetic parasite is exposed in its true form. Because you cannot heal a lineage while allowing someone to siphon the very life force you need to break the curse. Then something extraordinary happens, so subtle yet profound it feels like the air itself changes color. Your father extends his hand, not to touch you, but to cast something around you. A shield, but not one of steel or stone. It is made of light so fine it looks like silk, yet so strong it could split the intentions of anyone who approaches you with anything less than truth. A sphere of ancestral protection, woven from every root and branch of the family tree, from every ancestor who wished they had your courage, your clarity, your chance. This is not superstition. This is inheritance. This is the kind of spiritual technology older civilizations trusted more than laws. The energy of those who walk beside you even after their bodies have turned to dust. And as this invisible shield settles around your spirit, you feel something rise within you. A fusion of courage and serenity, the kind you only feel when you finally realize you are no longer alone in the fight. The energy around you intensifies. The air thickens like the moment before a prophecy is spoken. The emotional softness of the earlier moments crystallizes into something far more powerful. Sacred authority. You feel the shift like a tide turning. This is no longer a conversation. It is initiation. The high point of a ritual you did not consciously know you were entering. Your father's final message is not a warning. It is a coronation. You are the one who will free this family. And as the words echo through you, the truth becomes unmistakable. You are not being led into revelation. You are becoming it. Virgo, you were chosen to end the sacrifice. The night your power was returned to you. There comes a point, Virgo, when the journey stops being about survival and becomes about awakening. A point where the universe no longer whispers but places the truth directly into your hands. Tonight is that threshold. You may feel something inside you steadying, as if your spirit straightens its spine after decades of bending. And in that newfound stillness, your father's presence shifts again, this time not as memory, not as comfort, not even as revelation. He stands before you as witness, as guide, as the bearer of a legacy that has waited generations for someone strong enough to receive it. The air grows brighter around him, not visually, but energetically, the way a candle's flame glows differently when a room finally breathes. You sense in him the gravity of ancient oaths, the weight of ancestors whose names you have never spoken, whose wounds you have felt without understanding. He steps forward with something cradled in his hands, not an object, but a light, a pulse, a lineage condensed into a single offering. And when he places it in front of you, you understand without words what it is. The torch of your bloodline. The power every generation before you needed but could not hold. He tells you the words you've been waiting your whole life to hear. You are the one chosen to end the cycle of sacrifice. Not chosen by favoritism or destiny, but by endurance. By empathy. By the quiet strength you have always mistook for mere resilience. Because only those who know the weight of burden can end burden. Only those who have carried too much too long can be trusted to set it down for everyone who comes after. The world around you begins to shift as if responding to your inner transformation. The water in your mind, the water that has been murky with obligation, fear, guilt, and inherited pain, begins to clear. Slowly, deliberately, like sediment finally settling after years of turbulence. You watch metaphorically as the cloudy depths turn transparent, revealing the shape of your own reflection beneath. And then, like a mirror being cleaned for the first time in years, you see yourself. Not the version molded by others' expectations, but the one you were meant to become. This is your initiation. The moment your soul steps into its rightful authority. The moment the generational fog lifts and you finally see where the lies ended and where the truth begins. Your father tells you that this clarity is not merely symbolic, it is the key to your liberation. He tells you the truth many earth signs learn later in life, that healing is not a feeling, it is a boundary. A sentence spoken. A line drawn. A refusal to hand your well-being to people who have proven they cannot hold it. You realize now that no is not rejection. It is self-respect. It is the gate you build to protect your inner garden from those who trample without care. And yes, Virgo, it will feel foreign at first, because your life so far has been shaped by accommodating, by softening, by anticipating the needs of others before they even articulate them. But the torch your father gives you cannot burn in a life lived for everyone else. It needs oxygen. It needs space. It needs truth. And that truth is this: you are allowed to choose yourself. Not as rebellion, but as restoration. Not as ego, but as alignment with your earth nature. Steady, grounded, real. Your father reminds you that spirit without ground becomes fantasy, and ground without spirit becomes emptiness. Your task now is to balance both. To walk through life with your feet on the earth and your intuition open to the sky. To move through the world as someone who honors both the physical and the mystical without letting either consume you. And so he asks you to return to your life with new eyes, to notice where your energy leaks, where your heart tightens, where your patience thins, where your spirit dims. To notice the people who brighten your fire and the ones who drain it. To notice the small betrayals you've learned to ignore, the responsibilities you inherited without consent, and the habits that keep you small. Because transformation does not happen in visions alone, it happens in choices. In actions. In the everyday moments where you decide who you are becoming. The torch in your hands glows brighter now, not because it changes, but because you do. You hold it with a steadiness that surprises you. You feel heat where there used to be numbness. You feel clarity where there used to be confusion. You feel your ancestors behind you, not as burden but as support. And your father, now radiant with the light of everything he wished he could have given you in life, offers one final blessing. This is the end of the old story. And the beginning of you. In that moment, your initiation completes, not with fanfare, but with truth. You step into yourself fully for the first time. And the lineage exhales. Virgo, the blue sword of liberation, the night your spirit stepped into its true size. There comes a night, Virgo, when the air around you begins to vibrate with a truth so sharp it slices straight through the illusions you've lived inside for years. It does not arrive gently. It comes like a current, like a low hum beneath the skin, like a spark catching fire in a room you thought had long gone cold. And as you sit here, still, receptive, quietly brave, you can feel the atmosphere thicken with something sacred, something ancient, something that has been waiting for you to finally stand still long enough to receive it. Your father's energy shifts once more. What was soft becomes fierce. What was tender becomes protective. He steps forward with the clarity of someone who has traveled through realms beyond fear, beyond ego, beyond the stories that bind human hearts. His message sharpens. It becomes urgent. He warns you of the subtle dangers circling your life, financial decisions clouded by exhaustion, people drawn to your generosity like moths to flame, individuals who mistake your compassion for permission. Not threats to frighten you, but reminders. Reminders that not everyone who stands beside you stands with you. Reminders that your heart, so open and so willing, must be guarded as carefully as a sacred fire. He urges you to return to nature, not as escape but as medicine. To press your palms into the soil and let the steady ancient heartbeat of the earth pull the tension from your chest. To sit beside water, river, lake, ocean, and let it show you what release feels like. Earth to ground you, water to wash you, both to restore the Virgo spirit that has been carrying too much, absorbing too much, giving too much. He tells you that nature is the original temple, the first healer, the place where your intuition awakens like a sleeping animal finally stretching its limbs. Then, like a whisper left on a prayer, he shows you the angelic signs. The number 7 glowing like an old scripture, completion, inner mastery, the perfection of the soul's geometry. The number 9, pulsing with the quiet finality of a closing chapter, endings that clear the way for new life. These numbers are not coincidences. They are the universe tapping your shoulder, saying, prepare. You are crossing a threshold. But before rebirth, there must be cleansing. He calls you to clear your space, the home that holds your breath, your memories, your fatigue, your becoming. He asks you to remove the objects that cling to old versions of you, to discard what drains you, to open windows and let the stale energy escape like smoke from a long-burnt fire. This is not tidying. This is ritual. This is making room for the new self that has been waiting just beyond the horizon of your awareness. And then it happens. The shift you have felt approaching since the moment he first appeared. The room feels charged, as though lightning travels through the air in thin, invisible threads. The presence of your father grows unmistakably strong, almost luminous, almost tangible. This is the climax, the moment spirit breaks through the veil not to comfort you, but to transform you. He looks at you with a gravity so profound it feels like an entire lineage speaking through one voice. And he tells you the truth you have feared and longed for in equal measure. You must release the role of the victim. You were never meant to be the wounded one. You were born to be the builder. These words vibrate through you, shaking loose every story you've accepted that kept you small. Every apology you made for taking up space. Every time you shrank yourself to ease the discomfort of others. And then he reveals the truth that shifts the ground beneath your feet. You have been living smaller than your destiny. Not because you lacked courage. Not because you lacked strength. But because you were raised to survive, not to shine. Conditioned to endure, not to expand. Taught to be humble until you disappeared. And now, the vanishing ends. Your father lifts his hand, and in it is the blue sword of light, the ancient symbol of karmic liberation, the mythical blade found in legends across cultures, always carried by the one chosen to end cycles that others could not. The sword glows like the edge of dawn, like the first breath after grief, like the moment truth slices through denial. He raises it, not to threaten, but to sever. To cut the invisible cords that have bound your spirit to pain that does not belong to you. Stories you inherited, wounds you absorbed, burdens passed down like heirlooms. With a single, graceful strike, he cuts the ties. The release is immediate, a rupture and a relief, like the first inhale after years of shallow breathing. You feel your soul expand, stretching into the space life denied you, reclaiming everything you once surrendered just to keep the peace. This is your rebirth. Not in fire, but in clarity. Not in suffering, but in sovereignty. And as the blue light fades, your father's final message settles into your chest like a new heartbeat. You are free now. Step into the size of your true spirit. And for the first time, Virgo, you do. The calm has finally arrived, Virgo. It descends upon you like a blue velvet cloak, soft and sacred, wrapping every fragment of your being in peace. The storm within you has quieted, and the echoes of pain have dissolved into stillness. In this silence, you realize that what you once called suffering was never meant to break you, it was shaping you. Every tear, every disappointment, every unanswered question was a sacred training, preparing you for the light that now unfolds before you. You are standing at the threshold of a new beginning, reborn from the waters of your own purified emotion. The weight that once held you to the past is gone. What remains is clarity, pure, radiant, unmistakable. You begin to see that your father never truly left. His presence, once felt in whispers and signs, is now fused into your essence. He is the pulse in your heartbeat, the golden light in your breath, the silver cord that ties your soul to divine wisdom. Forgive yourself for the times you believed you were too much or not enough. Forgive the version of you who carried guilt that was never yours to bear. You are worthy, not because you are flawless, but because you have loved through every imperfection. The universe has seen your endurance, Virgo, and it crowns you quietly with grace. You are no longer a seeker of peace. You have become peace itself. Take a breath. Feel the golden light settling in your chest. This is not an ending, it is the sacred rebirth of your spirit. Go and live the beautiful life that awaits you. Let your kindness flow, but never again at the cost of your own soul. You have your father's blessing, and it is eternal. From this moment forward, walk gently but powerfully. The world needs the steadiness of your heart, the wisdom born from your pain, the quiet miracle that is you. The path ahead glows with stardust and new promise. Step into it without fear. The light is already within you, Virgo, and it will never fade.